Clara fell to her knees in the snow, her youngest child silent against her chest. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. Couldn't feel anything but the weight of 3 small bodies huddled behind her, waiting for her to save them. She had nothing. No husband, no home, no hope. Then a shadow blocked the wind. A man stood there, rifle in hand, looking at her bare feet, her bleeding children, her empty hands. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Get up. Follow me." If you want to know what happened next, subscribe and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below. I want to see how far this story travels. Clara's legs gave out first. She'd been walking since before dawn, carrying 2-year-old Thomas against her chest while the older children stumbled behind her. The snow had soaked through the rags wrapped around her feet hours ago. Now she couldn't tell where the cold ended and the pain began. "Mama!" Her daughter Lily's voice came thin and broken. "Mama, I can't." Clara turned. The 8-year-old had stopped in the middle of the frozen road, her lips blue, her small body shaking so hard her teeth clicked together like stones. "You can," Clara said. "You will." "My feet—" "I know, baby." Clara shifted Thomas higher on her hip. The boy hadn't cried in hours. That scared her more than anything. "Just a little further." "You said that before." 10-year-old Samuel spoke up. He stood beside his sister trying to hold 5-year-old Rosie upright. "You've been saying that all day." Clara looked at her eldest son. He had his father's jaw, his father's stubborn eyes. But unlike his father, Samuel had never once raised his voice to her, never once made her feel small. "I know what I said." "Then when—" Samuel's voice cracked. "When do we stop?" Clara didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. The truth was simple and terrible. She didn't know where they were going. She only knew where they couldn't go back to. 3 days ago, she'd had a house. It wasn't much: 4 walls, a leaking roof, a stove that smoked when the wind blew wrong. But it was shelter. It was something. Then William came home drunk, angrier than she'd ever seen him. He'd lost their land in a card game, lost everything her father had left her. And when she dared to ask how, when she dared to raise her voice, he'd hit her so hard she'd seen stars. "This is your fault," he'd screamed, while the children cowered in the corner. "You and your useless mouth, your useless children. I should have left you years ago." Then he had. He'd taken the horse, taken the money she'd hidden under the floorboards, taken every scrap of food except what was already rotting in the cellar. He'd walked out into the night and never looked back. The new owner showed up the next morning with a torch and a smile. "You got until sundown," he'd said. "After that, I burn what's left." Clara had begged, pleaded, offered to work, to cook, to clean, anything. The man had laughed. "Lady, I don't need a skinny woman with 4 mouths to feed. Get out or get burned out. Your choice." Now here she was 3 days later, with nothing but the clothes on her back and 4 children who were slowly freezing to death. "Mama!" Lily had started crying, silent tears freezing on her cheeks. "Mama, please!" Clara set her jaw. She bent down, ignoring the screaming pain in her back, and lifted Rosie onto her other hip. The 5-year-old weighed almost nothing. None of them did anymore. "Samuel, take your sister's hand." "I can't carry her." "I'm not asking you to carry her. I'm asking you to hold her hand." Clara's voice came out harder than she meant. "Can you do that?" Samuel nodded. He grabbed Lily's hand and pulled her forward step by step. They walked. The wind picked up driving snow into their faces like tiny needles. Thomas stirred against Clara's chest, whimpering softly. "Shh," she whispered. "Shh, baby. Mama's here." But Mama didn't know what to do. Mama was out of ideas, out of strength, out of everything except the raw animal need to keep her children alive. She didn't see the fence post until she walked into it. Clara stumbled, nearly dropping Rosie. She caught herself on the rough wood splinters driving into her palm. A fence. A fence meant property. Property meant people. She looked up. Through the swirling snow, she could just make out the shape of a building, low and solid with smoke rising from a chimney. "Samuel!" Her voice came out as a croak. "Samuel, do you see that?" "I see it. We're going there." "What if they won't help us?" Clara didn't answer. She just started walking. The house was bigger than she'd thought. A proper ranch house with a barn to one side and a corral full of cattle. This wasn't some dirt farmer's shack. This was real land, real money, real danger. Clara hesitated at the gate. Men with money didn't help women like her. Men with money saw women like her as problems to be solved, usually in ways that cost more than Clara had left to give. But Thomas had stopped moving against her chest. She pushed through the gate. The front door opened before she reached the porch. A man stepped out, rifle in hand. He was tall, broad-shouldered with gray threading through dark hair and a face carved by decades of wind and weather. His eyes swept over her, once quick and assessing, like a man used to making decisions in seconds. Clara stopped walking. She couldn't have moved if she'd wanted to. Her legs had finally completely given out. She fell to her knees in the snow. "Please." The words scraped out of her throat like broken glass. "Please, my children." The man didn't move, didn't speak. Clara's vision was starting to blur. She could feel herself swaying, feel the last of her strength draining away like water through cracked ice. "I'm not asking for myself," she managed. "I'm asking for them, please. They haven't eaten in 2 days. They have no shoes. My boy—" Her voice broke. "My boy won't wake up. Please." Behind her, she heard Lily crying, heard Samuel trying to shush her, heard Rosie asking why Mama was on the ground. The man looked past Clara to the children. She watched his face, searching for disgust, for calculation, for the cruel amusement she'd seen in so many other faces over the past 3 days. She found none of it. Instead, something shifted in his eyes, something that looked almost like pain. He lowered the rifle. "Get up," he said. His voice was rough, unused. "Follow me." Clara tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. The man was beside her in 3 strides. Without a word, he took Thomas from her arms, then reached down and pulled her to her feet. His hand was warm even through her frozen sleeve. "Can you walk?" Clara swallowed. "I don't know." "Try." She tried. She made it 2 steps before her knees buckled again. The man caught her, steadied her, didn't let go. "Samuel," he called, and Clara flinched at the sound of her son's name in this stranger's mouth. "That your name, boy?" "Yes, sir." Samuel's voice was wary, protective. "Help your sisters inside. Doors open. Fires lit. Don't touch nothing else." Samuel hesitated, looking at Clara. "Go," she whispered. "Take them inside." Samuel gathered his sisters and hurried toward the house, half carrying Lily the last few feet. The man turned back to Clara. "What about you?" "I'll make it." "You sure about that?" Clara met his eyes. They were gray like the winter sky. Hard, but not cold. "I've made it this far." Something flickered across his face. Not quite a smile. Not quite anything she could name. "Reckon you have." He let go of her arm, slowly making sure she could stand. Then he walked toward the house, Thomas still cradled against his chest, and held the door open. Clara followed. The heat hit her like a wall. For a moment, all she could do was stand there, swaying, letting the warmth soak into her frozen bones. The fire crackled in a massive stone hearth. The smell of coffee and wood smoke and something cooking filled the air. Lily and Rosie were already huddled by the fire, shivering violently, as their bodies remembered what warmth felt like. Samuel stood guard beside them, watching the man with suspicious eyes. The man laid Thomas down on a bench near the stove, then pressed his hand to the boy's forehead. "He's burning up." Clara's heart seized. "The fever started 2 days ago. There was nothing. I ain't blaming you." The man was already moving, pulling a blanket from a chest, wrapping it around Thomas's small body. "There's a woman in town knows herbs and such. I'll send for her come morning. Right now, we get him warm and get some broth in him." "Thank you." The words felt pathetically inadequate. "Thank you, Don't thank me yet." He straightened, looking at her for the first time since they'd come inside. "Sit down before you fall down. When's the last time you ate?" Clara tried to remember. The days had blurred together into one long nightmare of cold and hunger, and putting one foot in front of the other. "I don't know." The man grunted. He moved to the stove, ladled something into a bowl, and brought it to her. "Eat." Clara took the bowl. Her hands were shaking so badly she nearly spilled it. The first taste of hot broth hit her tongue and she almost sobbed. "Slow," the man warned. "Stomach ain't used to food. You'll make yourself sick." She forced herself to slow down, forced herself to breathe. The man brought bowls to the children next, watching as they ate with the desperate concentration of the starving. Lily burned her mouth and didn't care. Samuel tried to give half his portion to Rosie. The man stopped him. "There's plenty. Eat your own." Samuel looked up at him, something complicated moving behind his eyes. "Why are you helping us?" The man didn't answer right away. He pulled a chair from the table, sat down across from Clara, and studied her face for a long moment. "What's your name?" "Clara. Clara Whitmore." "I'm Eli Brennan." He nodded toward the children. "Those yours?" "Yes. All of them. All of them. And their father." Clara's jaw tightened. "Gone." "Gone how? Does it matter?" Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Reckon it might. Man don't usually leave his wife and children to freeze to death in a blizzard without a reason. The reason is he's a coward and a drunk." Clara heard the bitterness in her own voice and didn't try to hide it. "He lost our land in a card game. When I asked him how he—" She stopped, looked at the children. "He left. Took everything we had and left. And the house? Burned. New owner wanted us out." Eli absorbed this without expression. Then he looked at Samuel, at Lily, at Rosie barely staying awake in her bowl, at Thomas shivering on the bench. "You walked here in this weather with 4 children." "I didn't have a choice." "How far?" 3 days, maybe more. I lost count." Something shifted in Eli's face, something that might have been respect or might have been something else entirely. 3 days, he repeated. Barefoot. The shoes fell apart on the first day. He shook his head slowly. "Most men I know wouldn't have made it 1 day in your place. Most men you know have never had to." The words came out sharper than she intended. Clara waited for the flash of anger, the defensive pride she'd learned to expect from men when a woman spoke too plainly. It didn't come. Instead, Eli just nodded. "Fair enough." The night passed in fragments. Clara tried to stay awake, tried to watch over Thomas, but exhaustion pulled her under again and again. Each time she surfaced, she found Eli still there, stoking the fire, checking on Thomas, draping another blanket over the children. Once she woke to find him sitting beside the bench, where Thomas lay, pressing a cool cloth to the boy's forehead. His hands, large and calloused, moved with surprising gentleness. "You should sleep," she said, her voice rough with exhaustion. He didn't look up. "I've gone longer without. I can watch him. You can barely keep your eyes open." He glanced at her, then just briefly. "Rest. I'll wake you if anything changes." Clara wanted to argue. She didn't trust this man, didn't trust any man, didn't know why he was helping them or what he expected in return. But her body wouldn't cooperate. Her eyes were already closing. "Thank you," she whispered. She wasn't sure if he heard. Dawn came gray and cold. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of quiet voices. She was lying on the floor near the fire, covered with a quilt that hadn't been there when she fell asleep. Every muscle in her body ached. "Mama." She opened her eyes. Lily was kneeling beside her, looking more alive than she had in days. Her cheeks had color again. Her eyes were bright. "Mama, the man made eggs." Clara sat up slowly, wincing. "Is Thomas—" "His fever broke an hour ago." Eli's voice came from the kitchen. He was standing at the stove, a spatula in hand, looking completely incongruous. "He's sleeping proper now. Should be all right." The relief hit Clara so hard she couldn't breathe. She pressed her hand to her mouth, willing herself not to cry in front of the stranger, in front of her children. She failed. The tears came anyway, silent and unstoppable, streaming down her face, while Lily wrapped her arms around her neck and held on tight. "It's okay, Mama. It's okay." Clara held her daughter and cried, and for the first time in 3 days, she let herself believe that maybe it would be. Breakfast was eggs, salt pork, and leftover beans, more food than Clara's children had seen in a week. She watched them eat, her own appetite still too knotted with anxiety to manage more than a few bites. Eli ate standing up, leaning against the wall near the window. He'd been watching the weather since dawn, his expression unreadable. "Storm's getting worse," he said finally. "You won't be traveling today." Clara looked up. "We can't impose—" "You ain't imposing, you're snowed in." He set his plate down. "Road won't be passable for 2, maybe 3 days. Maybe longer. We'll find somewhere else." "Where?" His voice was blunt, not cruel. "You got people waiting for you. Somewhere you need to be." Clara didn't answer. They both knew she didn't. "Then stay until the weather clears. We'll figure the rest out after." "Why?" The question came out before she could stop it. Eli looked at her, something flickering in those gray eyes. "Why what? Why are you helping us? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me except that I showed up on your doorstep half dead with 4 children. Most people would have turned us away." "I ain't most people." "That's not an answer." Eli was quiet for a long moment. He crossed to the window, looking out at the swirling snow. "I had a wife once," he said. "Long time ago now. She got sick one winter, fever like your boys. I rode 20 miles through weather worse than this to fetch a doctor. By the time I got back—" He paused. "She was gone." Clara didn't speak, didn't dare. "After that, I told myself I'd never let someone die on my land because I was too proud or too scared to help them." He turned to face her. "So when I saw you fall down in my yard half frozen, holding a child who wasn't moving, I didn't think about whether I should help you. I just did." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm sorry. About your wife." "It was a long time ago." "That doesn't mean it stopped hurting." Eli looked at her, then really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. "No," he said quietly. "Reckon it doesn't." The morning passed in unexpected ways. Clara couldn't sit still. She'd never been good at accepting charity, at being helpless, at letting someone else take care of things that she could handle herself. So she got up. She washed the dishes. She swept the floor. She found a needle and thread in a basket near the fireplace and started mending the holes in Samuel's shirt. Eli watched her for a while without comment. Then he said, "You don't have to do that. I know. You should be resting. I've rested enough." Clara didn't look up from her sewing. "I'm not used to sitting idle. Makes me nervous." "What are you nervous about?" "Everything." Clara thought. "You. This place. What happens when the snow stops. What you'll expect in return." But she didn't say any of that. She just shrugged. "Old habit, I suppose." Eli grunted. He pulled on his coat and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Clara asked before she could stop herself. "Cattle need feeding. Won't take long." He was halfway out the door when Samuel scrambled to his feet. "Can I come?" Eli stopped, looked at the boy. "You know anything about cattle?" "No, sir." But I can learn. Clara started to object. Samuel was still weak, still recovering, but something in her son's face stopped her. He needed this, needed to feel useful, to feel like a man instead of a burden. Eli seemed to understand. He nodded once. "Bundle up, it's cold out there." Samuel grabbed his coat, still damp, still too thin, and followed Eli into the snow. Clara watched them go, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. They were gone for 2 hours. Clara tried not to worry, tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, she focused on the children, on Thomas's improving color, on Lily and Rosie, playing quietly by the fire with a set of wooden blocks Eli had dug out of a chest. When the door finally opened, Samuel came in first, pink-cheeked and breathless. "Mama, I fed the cattle. Mr. Brennan showed me how to break the ice in the trough and everything." Clara smiled, something loosening in her chest. "Did he? And I helped fix a fence post. It was broken, and the wire was all loose and—" "Let the woman breathe, boy." Eli came in behind him, stamping snow from his boots. But there was something different in his voice, something almost warm. "He did good," Eli said to Clara. "Works hard, doesn't complain." Samuel stood straighter at the praise. "Thank you," Clara said, "for taking him." Eli shrugged, hanging up his coat. "Needed the help." They both knew that wasn't true, but neither of them said so. That afternoon, while the children napped, Clara found herself alone with Eli in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, cleaning his rifle hands, moving with practiced ease. She was mending Rosie's dress, the fabric so worn it barely held together. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Depends on what it is." "How long have you been alone out here?" Eli's hands paused on the rifle, just for a moment. 7 years, give or take." 7 years. Clara shook her head. "That's a long time." "Gets easier." He resumed his cleaning. "Or you get used to it, not sure which." "I don't think I could do it, be alone like that." "You don't know what you can do until you have to do it." He looked at her, those gray eyes steady. "You walked 3 days through a blizzard with 4 children and no shoes. A week ago, would you have thought you could do that?" Clara considered. "No, I suppose not." "There you go." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the soft scrape of Eli's cloth on metal. "What was her name?" Clara asked finally. "Your wife." "Eleanor." The name came out soft, worn smooth by years of memory. Everyone called her Ellie. Was she beautiful? To me she was. Clara smiled sadly. That's the best kind of beautiful. Eli looked at her, then something indefinable in his expression. What about you? You loved him. Your husband. Clara's hands stilled on Rosie's dress. The question shouldn't have hurt. She'd asked first, after all, but it did anyway. I thought I did. When I was young. When he was different. She shook her head. Or maybe he was always like this, and I just didn't want to see it. When did it change? After Samuel was born, the first time he hit me. Clara's voice was steady, matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing the weather. I told myself it was the drink, that it wouldn't happen again. But it did. And it got worse, and I stayed anyway. Why? It was the question everyone asked, the question she'd asked herself 1,000 times. Because I had nowhere else to go, because I thought the children needed their father, because I was scared of what he'd do if I tried to leave. She looked up at Eli. Mostly, I think, because I didn't believe I deserved any better. Eli was quiet for a long moment. Then he said very softly, You were wrong. Clara's eyes stung. She blinked hard, looking back down at the dress in her lap. I know that now. The second night was easier. Eli gave up his bed for Clara and the children, insisting he'd sleep in the barn with the cattle. Clara tried to argue, but he wouldn't hear it. "I've slept in worse places. You need the rest." The bed was narrow, but warm, the mattress stuffed with straw and covered with a thick wool blanket. Clara lay awake long after the children had fallen asleep, listening to the wind howl outside, thinking about the strange turn her life had taken. 3 days ago, she'd been certain she was going to die. Now, she was lying in a warm bed in a house that smelled of coffee and cedar, while a man she'd just met tended her sick child and gave up his own comfort for her sake. She didn't know what to make of it. Didn't know what to make of him. All she knew was that for the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She wasn't sure what to call it yet, but it felt like the beginning of something. The third morning, Clara woke to find Eli already gone. There was coffee on the stove, warm and fresh. A note on the table in rough handwriting. "Rode to town for medicine. Back by nightfall. Don't worry. Don't worry." As if she knew how to do anything else. The day crawled by. Clara kept busy cleaning, cooking, caring for Thomas, who was finally strong enough to sit up and take solid food. Samuel took it upon himself to keep the fire going and the water bucket full. Lily and Rosie played their endless games with the wooden blocks. By late afternoon, Clara was standing at the window watching the road. "He'll come back," Samuel said from behind her. "He said he would." "I know." "You don't believe him." Clara turned to look at her son. He was growing up so fast, this boy who'd had to become a man before his time. "I want to believe him." "That's not the same thing." "No," Clara admitted. "It's not." Samuel came to stand beside her at the window. "I think he's a good man, Mama. The way he talks to us, the way he looks at you. He's not like Pa." Clara's heart tightened. "How would you know? You've only known him 3 days." "I knew Pa my whole life." Samuel's voice was quiet. "That's how I know." Clara didn't have an answer for that. Eli returned at sunset, covered in snow, carrying a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Medicine," he said, setting it on the table. "From the healer in town. Said to give him a spoonful twice a day until the bottle's empty." "How much do I owe you?" Eli looked at her like she'd said something ridiculous. "Nothing." "I can't let you." "You can and you will." His voice was firm. "I didn't help you so you'd owe me something, Clara. I helped you because it was the right thing to do." Clara felt something crack inside her. Some wall she'd built over years of disappointment and betrayal slowly beginning to crumble. "Thank you," she whispered. Eli nodded once. Then he sat down heavily in the chair nearest the fire, and Clara saw for the first time how tired he looked. "The ride took more out of you than you're letting on." "I'm fine." "You're not." Clara moved toward him, her hands already reaching for his coat. "You're half frozen and exhausted. Let me—" "I said I'm fine." But he didn't stop her when she helped him out of his coat. Didn't stop her when she brought him a cup of hot coffee and pressed it into his hands. Didn't stop her when she pulled a blanket from the chest and draped it over his shoulders. "You're a stubborn woman," he said quietly. "I've been told." Wasn't a complaint. Clara smiled despite herself. Wasn't an apology. Eli looked up at her, and something passed between them, something wordless and fragile and terrifyingly new. "No," he said. "I don't suppose it was." That night, after the children had gone to bed, they sat together by the fire. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, rich with everything they hadn't yet said and might never say. Finally, Eli broke it. "Storm should pass by morning. Roads'll be clear in a day or two." Clara nodded her chest tight. "I know." "You got anywhere to go? Anyone who'll take you in?" She shook her head. "No. No family, no friends. My family's all gone. My friends—" She laughed bitterly. "My husband made sure I didn't have any of those left." Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You could stay." Clara looked at him sharply. "What?" "Here, you and the children. You could stay." He wasn't looking at her, his eyes fixed on the fire. "I've got more space than I need, more work than I can handle alone. It wouldn't be charity, you'd earn your keep." "Eli, I ain't asking you to decide right now, just think about it. That's all I'm asking." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. 100 thoughts raced through her mind, doubts and fears and warnings born of years of hard experience. But underneath all of that quieter but persistent was something else. Hope. "I'll think about it," she said. Eli nodded, still not looking at her. "That's all I'm asking." The fire crackled between them. Outside, the wind had finally died down, leaving nothing but silence and snow and the vast endless sky. Clara looked at this man, this stranger who had taken her in without question, who had fed her children and nursed her son and asked for nothing in return. She didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if she could trust him, trust herself, trust anything ever again. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened next, she would face it standing up. She'd come too far to fall now. The storm broke some time before dawn, leaving behind a silence so complete Clara could hear her own heartbeat. She lay awake in the narrow bed, Rosie curled against her side, Thomas's breathing soft and even for the first time in days. Through the small window, she could see the first pale streaks of light bleeding across the sky. Stay. The word echoed in her mind, turning itself over and over like a stone in a river. She'd thought about it all night, thought about what it would mean to accept this stranger's offer to build a life on another man's land, to trust someone again after everything William had taught her about trust. She thought about what it would mean to say no. The door creaked softly. Clara tensed her hand instinctively, reaching for the children. But it was only Eli moving quietly through the main room, his boots already on his coat in hand. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the children, and followed him. "You're up early," she said. Eli turned surprised to see her. "Didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't. I couldn't sleep." He nodded, understanding more than she'd said. "Coffee's on. Help yourself." "Where are you going?" "South pasture. Snow spooked the cattle last night. Need to check they didn't break through the fence." Clara grabbed her borrowed coat from the hook. "I'll come with you." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to." She met his eyes steady and sure. "I want to." Eli studied her for a long moment. Then he handed her a pair of gloves. "Keep up." The cold hit her the moment they stepped outside, sharp and clean and almost painful. But it was a different kind of cold than the one she'd walked through 3 days ago. This cold had edges, had boundaries. This cold she could survive. They walked in silence, their breath fogging in the early morning air. The snow crunched beneath their boots, and somewhere in the distance a bird called out, high and lonely. "I've been thinking," Clara said finally, "about your offer, about staying." Eli didn't break stride. And I have questions." "Ask them." Clara took a breath. "What would you expect from me, from us? Expect, in return, for letting us stay?" Eli stopped walking. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable in the gray morning light. "I told you, you'd earn your keep. Work the land, help with the cattle, keep the house running, same as any hired hand. And that's all." Something flickered in his eyes. Understanding, maybe, or something darker. "That's all I'm asking for, Clara. If you're worried I'm expecting something else." He shook his head. "I ain't that kind of man." "How do I know that?" "You don't." His voice was blunt honest. "You just met me. You got no reason to trust me except what you've seen. But I'll tell you this, I've been alone 7 years. If all I wanted was a woman in my bed, I could have found one a long time ago." Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks. "That's not what I—" "It's exactly what you meant, and it's a fair question." He started walking again. I ain't offended. I'm just telling you the truth. They reached the south pasture in silence. The fence was intact, the cattle huddled together against the cold, but calm. Eli checked the posts one by one, testing for weakness, while Clara watched. "Can I ask you something now?" he said without looking up. "I suppose that's fair. Why'd you stay with him? All those years?" Clara had expected the question. She'd asked it of herself often enough. But hearing it from someone else, someone who had no stake in the answer, made it harder to dodge. "Because I was scared," she said. "Because I had nowhere to go. Because every time I thought about leaving, he'd be kind for a while, and I'd convince myself it would be different." "Was it ever different?" "No, it just got worse." She hugged her arms against the cold. "The last time before he left, I thought he was going to kill me. I saw it in his eyes, and I knew if I didn't get out he would. One day he would." Eli straightened his work on the fence done. He looked at her for a long moment, his face carved in hard lines. "He ever comes near you again," he said quietly, "he'll have to go through me first." Clara didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know what to do with the fierce protectiveness in his voice, the certainty of it. "You barely know me," she managed. "I know enough." "What do you know?" Eli stepped closer. Not threatening, not demanding, just close enough that she could see the flecks of darker gray in his eyes. "I know you walked 3 days through a blizzard to save your children. I know you fell down in my yard, and the first thing you did was beg for them, not yourself. I know you've got more grit in your little finger than most men I've met in my whole life." He paused. "And I know that whatever that man did to you, you didn't deserve it. None of it." Clara's eyes stung. She blinked hard, refusing to cry. "You don't know that." "Yeah," Eli said. "I do." They stood there in the cold morning air, the cattle lowing softly behind them, the sun just starting to break over the ridge. "I'll stay," Clara said. "If the offer's still good." "It's still good." "Then we'll stay. But I want to work. Really work. I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be." "And the children. The children are welcome here. All of them. Long as they need." Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. She turned toward the house, then stopped. "Eli." "Yeah." "Thank you." He didn't say anything, just tipped his head once and went back to checking the fence. But Clara saw the way his shoulders relaxed, the way the tension bled out of his stance. And she knew without him saying it that her answer had mattered to him, more than he'd let on. The days took on a rhythm after that. Clara rose before dawn had the fire going, and coffee brewing before Eli came in from his first round of chores. They'd eat breakfast together, her and Eli and the children, and then the work would begin. She learned fast, because she had to. Learned how to muck out stalls and haul water and check for signs of sickness in the herd. Her hands blistered, then calloused. Her back ached every night. But there was something satisfying in the exhaustion, something clean about falling into bed knowing she'd earned her rest. Samuel became Eli's shadow, following him everywhere, asking questions, soaking up knowledge like dry earth soaking up rain. The boy had never had a man worth learning from. Now he did. "He's good with the horses," Eli told Clara one evening a week into their stay. "Got a gentle hand. Animals trust him." Clara watched her son through the window, brushing down the old mare in the fading light. His father never let him near the animals, said he was too soft. Soft ain't the same as weak. "I know that." "Does he—" Clara turned to look at Eli. He was watching Samuel too, something thoughtful in his expression. "I don't know," she admitted. "William spent 10 years telling him he wasn't good enough. That kind of thing. It doesn't just go away." "No, it doesn't." Eli was quiet for a moment. "But it can be undone, if someone takes the time." Clara's throat tightened. "Are you offering—" "I'm saying I got work that needs doing and a boy who's willing to learn." He met her eyes. "Rest is up to him." That night after supper, Eli pulled a worn book from the shelf and handed it to Samuel. "You can read." "Yes, sir. Mama taught me." "Good. This was my father's. History of the territory from the old days. Thought you might like it." Samuel took the book like it was made of gold. "For me, to borrow. You take care of it here." "Yes, sir. I will." Clara watched her son carry the book to the corner near the fire, his face lit with something she hadn't seen in years. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. She caught Eli's eye across the room. He looked away quickly, busying himself with the dishes, but not before she saw the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. The snow melted slowly, revealing the brown earth beneath, and Clara felt something inside her melting too. The constant knot of fear in her chest began to loosen. The nightmares came less often. She stopped flinching every time a door opened. Eli never pushed, never asked for more than she could give. He taught her to ride patient and steady, never raising his voice even when she nearly fell off twice. He showed her how to mend a fence, how to read the sky for weather, how to tell when a cow was ready to calve. And slowly, carefully, he began to show her other things too. The way he'd pause at the window to watch the sunset. The way he talked to the horses soft and low like they were old friends. The way he'd sit by the fire at night reading and glance up whenever she walked past as if he couldn't help himself. Clara noticed. She noticed everything. She just didn't know what to do about it. "Mama." Lily tugged at her sleeve one morning, pulling her back from her thoughts. "Mama, I need to show you something." "What is it, sweetheart?" Lily grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the window. Outside in the yard, Samuel was helping Eli repair a section of the corral fence. Rosie sat on an overturned bucket nearby, chattering to herself while Thomas toddled after a chicken that wanted nothing to do with him. "Look," Lily said. "We look like a real family." Clara's heart clenched. "Lily, I know he's not our papa. I know that." Lily's voice was serious, too serious for an 8-year-old. "But he's nice, Mama. He doesn't yell. He doesn't make you cry." "No," Clara said softly. "He doesn't. So why can't we just stay forever?" Clara didn't have an answer for that. She just pulled her daughter close and held on. Later that day, while the children napped and the house was quiet, Eli found her in the barn trying to fix a broken harness. "You're doing that wrong." Clara looked up frustrated. "Then show me how to do it right." He came and stood beside her close enough that she could smell the leather and wood smoke that seemed to cling to him always. His hands covered hers, guiding them through the motion. "Like this. See? You gotta loop it under first, then pull tight." Clara tried to focus on the harness. Tried not to think about the warmth of his hands, the steadiness of his presence. "I think I've got it," she said, her voice coming out breathless. "You sure?" "I'm sure." He stepped back and she immediately missed the closeness, missed it in a way that scared her. "Clara." His voice was low. "I need to tell you something." She looked up. His face was serious, almost grim. "What is it?" "I rode into town yesterday, picked up supplies, talked to some folks." He paused. "There's been a man asking around, asking about a woman traveling with 4 children." Clara's blood turned to ice. "What kind of man?" "Deputy from Granger County, name of Silas Garrett." She knew that name. She knew it too well. "He's William's cousin," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's the one who used to. When William would go too far, Silas would come clean up the mess, make sure no one talked. He's looking for you." "I know. Does he know where you are?" "I don't know. I don't think so. We didn't follow any roads. I made sure of that." Eli nodded slowly. "Good. That's good?" Clara's hands were shaking. She set down the harness before she dropped it. "I should go. I should take the children and go where, I don't know. Somewhere. Anywhere." I can't bring this down on you, Eli. If Silas finds me here, if Silas finds you here, he'll have to deal with me. You don't understand. He's dangerous. He's got a badge. I don't care what he's got. Eli's voice was calm, steady, utterly certain. You're on my land now, you and those children. And as long as you're here, you're under my protection. Eli, I ain't asking you to marry me, Clara. I ain't asking for anything you're not ready to give. But I am telling you this, you don't have to run anymore. Not from him. Not from anyone. Clara stared at him, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Why? She asked. Why do you care so much? We're nothing to you. We're strangers. You're not strangers, not anymore. He took a step toward her. I've watched you these past weeks. I've seen how hard you work, how much you love those children, how strong you are, even when you think you're breaking. You're not a stranger to me, Clara. You haven't been for a long time. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink them away, but they fell anyway, hot and fast. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm so scared. I know. What if he finds us? What if he takes them away? He won't. You can't promise that. No, Eli agreed. I can't promise you anything, but I can tell you this, I'll fight for you, for all of you, with everything I've got. Clara looked at this man, this quiet, steady man who had appeared out of nowhere and changed everything. She thought about William, about all the promises he'd made and broken. She thought about trust and how much it cost and how hard it was to give. And then she thought about her children, about the way Samuel smiled now, the way Lily laughed, the way Thomas reached for Eli like he was something safe. Okay, she said. Okay, we'll stay. We'll fight. Together. Eli's face softened. Not quite a smile, but something close. Together, he repeated. And for the first time since she'd fallen in that snowbank, Clara let herself believe that maybe, just maybe together, would be enough. The next morning brought trouble faster than either of them expected. Clara was in the kitchen kneading bread when she heard the sound of hooves. Not one horse, several. Her hands froze in the dough. Eli? He was already moving toward the window, rifle in hand. Stay inside. Keep the children in the back room. Eli, who is it? He didn't answer. He just opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. Clara gathered the children quietly. She herded them into the back room, pressed her finger to her lips. Stay here. Don't make a sound. Mama, what's happening? Lily's eyes were wide with fear. Nothing, baby. Just stay here. I'll be right back. She crept to the window and peered out. 3 men on horseback. One of them wore a badge that caught the morning light. Silas. He looked the same as she remembered, tall, lean, with a face like a knife and eyes that saw everything. He was smiling, and that smile made her stomach turn. Morning, Silas called out, not dismounting. Looking for a woman. Clara Whitmore. You seen her? Eli stood, his ground rifle resting easy in his hands. Can't say I have. That's so. Silas's smile widened. Funny thing. Folks in town say you had a woman staying here. Woman with 4 children. Ring any bells? People in town talk too much. They do indeed. Silas leaned forward in his saddle. Thing is, her husband's real worried about her. About those children. Wants them back safe and sound. Her husband left them to freeze in a blizzard. That's not how he tells it. I don't much care how he tells it. The 2 men stared at each other, the tension thick enough to cut. I've got papers, Silas said finally. From a judge in Granger County. Says the children belong with their father. Says the woman's wanted for kidnapping and theft. Papers from Granger County don't mean nothing here. They will. Once I bring the sheriff from your county into it. Eli didn't flinch. You do what you need to do, but right now you're on my land without invitation. I suggest you leave. Silas's smile disappeared. You're making a mistake, friend. I ain't your friend, and I don't make mistakes. For a long moment, no one moved. Clara held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. Then Silas laughed a cold, hollow sound. "All right, rancher, have it your way." He gathered his reins. "But this ain't over, not by a long shot." He turned his horse and rode away, the other two men following. Clara watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. Eli was beside her in seconds, catching her before she hit the floor. "Easy, easy, they're gone." "For now." Clara's voice shook. "They're gone for now. I know. He'll come back. He always comes back." Eli helped her to a chair, then knelt in front of her, his hands steady on her arms. "Listen to me. I don't care what papers he has or what judge signed them. He's not taking you or those children. Not while I'm breathing. Eli, you can't fight the law. Watch me." Clara looked at him. Really looked. At the set of his jaw, the steel in his eyes, the absolute certainty in every line of his body. And despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the impossible odds, she felt something else. Hope. "What do we do?" she asked. "First we get our own papers. There's a judge 2 counties over. Fair man. Owes me a favor." Eli squeezed her hands. "Second, we don't let them catch us unprepared again. I'll teach you to shoot. Samuel too, if you'll let me. And third," Eli's jaw tightened. "Third, we find out exactly what your husband's after. Because a man like that doesn't send his cousin across 2 counties just to get back a wife he threw away." Clara thought about it. Thought about William, about his rages, about the land he'd lost. About the land she'd inherited from her father. Land that legally still belonged to her. "The property," she breathed. "My father's land. William couldn't sell it without my signature. He needs you alive. He needs me under his thumb." Eli stood his face grim. "Then we make sure that never happens." Clara nodded, something hardening inside her. The fear was still there, but it had company now. Anger, determination, and something else, something she didn't dare name yet, but that felt a lot like strength. "I'm not running anymore," she said. "No, ma'am, you ain't. Whatever comes, we face it together." Eli looked at her, and something passed between them. An understanding, a promise. "Together," he said. And this time, Clara believed it. The rest of the day passed in tense preparation. Eli showed her where he kept the spare rifles, how to load them, where to take the children if things went bad. He rode out to speak with neighbors, men he trusted, men who'd stand with him if it came to that. Clara worked through her fear, channeling it into action. She reinforced the windows. She packed emergency bags. She taught Lily how to keep Rosie and Thomas quiet, how to hide if someone came. That night, after the children were asleep, she found Eli on the porch, staring out at the darkness. "Can I join you?" He nodded, moving over to make room. They sat in silence for a while, the cold night air settling around them like a blanket. "I never thanked you properly," Clara said finally. "For what?" "For standing up to him today. Most men would have handed me over." "I ain't most men." "No." Clara smiled despite herself. "You're not." Eli glanced at her, something soft flickering in his eyes. "What was he like, before he turned mean?" Clara considered the question. "Charming. When he wanted to be. He could make you feel like the most important person in the world. And then he could make you feel like nothing at all." Sounds exhausting. It was. She pulled her shawl tighter. "I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I just did better, he'd go back to being the man I married. But that man never existed. It was just a mask. And now I know better." They fell silent again. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called out. "Can I ask you something?" Clara said. "Depends. After your wife died, did you ever think about marrying again?" Eli was quiet for a long time. So long, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. "I thought about it," he said finally. Once or twice, but I never met anyone who made me want to try. And now, he turned to look at her, his face half in shadow. Now I'm thinking about it. Clara's heart stuttered. She didn't know what to say, didn't know what she wanted to say. Eli, you don't have to say anything. His voice was gentle. I ain't asking for an answer. I'm just telling you where I stand. Clara nodded slowly. Her hands were trembling, but not from cold. I need time, she said. Everything's happened so fast and I'm scared, and I don't know what I'm feeling or what I want. I just need time. Take all the time you need. You mean that, Clara? He reached over and took her hand, his grip warm and steady. I've waited 7 years. I can wait a little longer. She looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers curled around hers, strong and gentle all at once. And for the first time in a very long time, she let herself lean into the warmth. They sat together until the stars came out, until the cold drove them inside, until the fire had burned down to embers. They didn't speak again about the future, or about Silas, or about what was coming. Some things didn't need words. Some things just needed time. The days that followed were thick with waiting. Clara learned to shoot on the 3rd morning after Silas's visit. Eli took her behind the barn, set up a row of tin cans on the fence, and put the revolver in her hands. It's heavier than I thought, she said. It'll feel lighter once you get used to it. He stood behind her, adjusting her stance. Feet apart, arms steady. Don't hold your breath. Breathe through it. Clara aimed at the first can. Her hands shook. I can't do this. You can. What if I miss? What if when it matters, I miss? Eli's voice was calm. Then you shoot again. And again. Until you don't miss. She pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, kicking up dirt 3 feet from the fence. Again, Eli said. She fired again. Closer this time, but still not close enough. Again. By the 10th shot, her arms ached and her ears rang. But the last can was lying in the dirt, a hole punched clean through its center. Good, Eli said. Now do it again tomorrow, and the day after, until it's as natural as breathing. Clara looked at the gun in her hands, at the smoke still curling from the barrel. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who needed to know this. Nobody thinks they'll be that kind of person, until they are. She met his eyes. Did you ever think you'd be this person? What person is that? The one standing between a stranger and everything trying to hurt her. Eli took the gun from her hands, checked the chamber, set it aside. You ain't a stranger, Clara. I thought we settled that. We did. I keep waiting for you to change your mind. I won't. How can you be so sure? He looked at her for a long moment, something shifting in his expression. Because I've spent 7 years not caring about much of anything. And then you showed up half dead in my yard, and something woke up in me that I thought was gone for good. He paused. I ain't letting that go. Not without a fight. Clara didn't know what to say. Her heart was pounding, but not from fear this time. Eli, you don't have to say anything. I told you I can wait. But the way he looked at her said he was tired of waiting. And the truth was, so was she. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed listening to the children breathe, thinking about everything that had happened and everything that might still come. She thought about William, about the man she'd married, and the monster he'd become. She thought about Silas, about the cold calculation in his eyes. She thought about her father's land, about what it was worth, and what William would do to get it. And she thought about Eli. She slipped out of bed and padded to the main room. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. Eli was asleep in the chair near the hearth, his rifle across his lap. He looked younger in sleep, less guarded. The hard lines of his face had softened, and she could see the man he might have been if life had been kinder. She must have made a sound because his eyes opened. He didn't startle, didn't reach for the gun, just looked at her. Can't sleep. No. Bad dreams. I haven't slept long enough to dream. He shifted, making room in the chair. Clara hesitated, then crossed the room and sat on the edge of the hearth, close enough to feel the dying warmth of the fire. I keep thinking about what happens next, she said. If Silas comes back with more men, if he brings William, if... Don't. Don't what? Don't borrow trouble. It'll find you soon enough without going looking for it. Clara smiled despite herself. Is that frontier wisdom? It's common sense. Something my mother used to say. He sat up straighter. Worrying about what might happen won't change it. All it does is steal the peace you got right now. And do you have peace right now? Eli considered the question. More than I've had in a long time. Because of us. Because we're here. Because you're here. Yes. The words hung in the air between them. Clara felt her breath catch. Eli, I need to tell you something. All right. I'm scared. Not just of Silas or William or what's coming. I'm scared of this. She gestured between them. Of what I'm starting to feel. Because the last time I let myself feel something for a man, he destroyed me. And I don't know if I can survive that again. Eli leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his eyes never leaving hers. I ain't him. I know that. In my head I know that. But my heart... She pressed her hand to her chest. My heart is slow to trust. I can work with slow. What if slow isn't enough? What if I'm too broken to ever be what you need? Clara. His voice was soft, softer than she'd ever heard it. You're not broken. You're bruised. There's a difference. What's the difference? Broken things can't be fixed. Bruised things just need time to heal. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back, but one escaped anyway, trailing down her cheek. Eli reached out and caught it with his thumb. His hand lingered on her face, warm and rough and impossibly gentle. I'm not asking you to love me, he said. I'm just asking you to let me stand beside you. Whatever comes. Clara covered his hand with her own. I think I can do that. Yeah. Yeah. They sat like that for a long time, hands intertwined, the fire crackling softly between them. And when Clara finally went back to bed, she slept better than she had in years. The trouble came 4 days later. Clara was in the barn brushing down the old mare when she heard Samuel shouting, "Mama! Mama Ryder's coming!" She dropped the brush and ran. By the time she reached the house, Eli was already on the porch, rifle in hand. But this time, there weren't 3 riders. There were 6. And at the front of them, sitting tall in the saddle with a smile that made Clara's blood freeze, was William. He looked different than she remembered. Thinner, harder. His face had a gaunt, hungry look, and his eyes burned with something that might have been madness. Hello, Clara. His voice was the same, though, smooth and cold and dripping with false charm. Miss me? Clara's hand went to the revolver at her hip. Eli had insisted she wear it every day, and now she understood why. Get off this land. Now is that any way to greet your husband? You're not my husband. You stopped being my husband the day you left us to die. William's smile flickered. Is that what you told these people, that I abandoned you? He shook his head, playing to the men behind him. She always was dramatic. Truth is, I went to find work. Came back to an empty house. Been looking for my family ever since. Liar. Careful, Clara. That's a serious accusation. Eli stepped forward. The lady asked you to leave. I suggest you do it. William turned his attention to Eli, his eyes narrowing. You must be the rancher, the one keeping my wife warm at night. I'm the man whose land you're standing on without permission. I've got permission. William reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. Judge in Granger County says I've got every right to collect my wife and children. Sheriff here agrees. Clara looked at the riders behind William. She recognized two of them from town. The rest were strangers, hard-looking men with guns on their hips. That paper's not worth the ink it's printed on, Eli said. Granger County's got no jurisdiction here. Maybe not, but these gentlemen do. William gestured to the men behind him. Sheriff's deputies, everyone, all perfectly legal. Silas rode forward, that cold smile on his face. Told you I'd be back, rancher. Told you this wasn't over. Eli didn't flinch. And I told you what would happen if you tried to take them. There's 6 of us and 1 of you. How do you reckon this ends? Badly, for you. William laughed, but there was no humor in it. I always did admire courage, even when it's stupid. He looked at Clara. Here's how this is going to go, wife. You're going to come with me nice and quiet. You're going to sign over that land your daddy left you. And then maybe if you're very good, I'll let you keep one of the children. Clara's hand tightened on the revolver. I'd die first. That can be arranged. Enough. Eli's voice cut through the air like a blade. You want her. You go through me. William raised an eyebrow. Silas. Silas drew his gun. So did the other deputies. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear. She looked at Eli, at the impossible odds, at the 6 guns pointed at the man who'd risked everything for her. No, she said. Everyone turned to look at her. No, William repeated. Clara stepped off the porch. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. I'll go with you, but you leave him alone. You leave the children alone. You get me and the land, and that's the end of it. Clara, no, Eli started. This is my choice. She met his eyes, trying to tell him everything she couldn't say out loud. Please, let me do this. I won't let you sacrifice yourself for... It's not sacrifice. It's the only way to keep them safe. William was watching this exchange with undisguised pleasure. Well, well, looks like you do still have some sense. Come on then, we've got a long ride ahead. Clara walked toward him, each step feeling like a mile. She could hear Lily crying inside the house, could hear Samuel shouting her name, could feel Eli's eyes boring into her back. She reached William's horse, looked up at the man who had made her life a living hell. One condition. You're not in a position to make conditions. One condition, or I swear to God, I'll make this as difficult as possible. I'll scream, I'll fight. I'll make sure every person in every town between here and Granger County knows exactly what kind of man you are. William's jaw tightened. What condition? I want to say goodbye to my children, properly. He considered this, then he nodded. 5 minutes, then we ride. Clara turned and walked back toward the house. Eli met her on the porch, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. I won't let you do this. You don't have a choice. The hell I don't. She grabbed his arm, pulled him close. Listen to me. There's a rifle in the barn behind the hay bales. 3rd stall. I saw it when I was brushing the mare. Eli's expression shifted. What are you saying? I'm saying 5 minutes is a long time, long enough for a man to get into position. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Clara, I'll keep him talking. You do what needs doing. If this goes wrong, then at least I'll have tried. She gripped his hand hard. I'm not running anymore. I told you that. And I'm not letting him win. Not this time. Eli looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Don't let him take you off this land. I won't. He disappeared around the side of the house. Clara took a deep breath and went inside. The children were huddled in the back room, exactly where she'd taught them to hide. Lily was crying. Samuel had his arms around his sisters, his face pale but determined. Mama, don't go with him, Lily sobbed. Please don't go. Clara knelt down and pulled them all close. Listen to me. I need you to stay here. Stay quiet. No matter what you hear, you stay here until Mr. Brennan comes for you. Do you understand, Mama? Do you understand? Samuel nodded, his jaw tight. Yes, ma'am. Good boy. She kissed his forehead, then Lily's, then Rosie's. She picked up Thomas and held him close, breathing in the sweet baby smell of him. I love you, she whispered. All of you. More than anything in this world. Mama, what's happening? Rosie asked, her small voice trembling. Something that should have happened a long time ago. Clara set Thomas down and stood. Remember, stay here. Stay quiet. I'll come back for you. She walked out of the room without looking back. If she looked back, she'd break. William was waiting in the yard, his patience visibly wearing thin. Time's up. I know. Clara walked toward him, her hand resting on the revolver at her hip. I was just thinking. About what? About the day we got married. Do you remember? William frowned, thrown off by the question. What does that have to do with anything? You told me you'd take care of me. You told me I'd never have to worry about anything again. Clara, you lied. She stopped walking about 20 feet from his horse. Every word out of your mouth was a lie. You never loved me. You only wanted what I had. My father's land. My father's money. This isn't the time for... You beat me. You starved me. You made me believe I was worthless. And then you left me and our children to die in the snow. Clara, enough. No, not enough. Not nearly enough. Her voice rose. You took everything from me. My home, my dignity, my hope. But you didn't take my children. And you didn't take my fight. William's face had gone red with fury. Get on the horse. Now. No. I said get on the... The shot rang out from the barn, catching Silas in the shoulder. He screamed and tumbled from his horse. Everything happened at once. The deputies scattered, reaching for their guns. William wheeled his horse, trying to find the shooter. Clara drew her revolver and fired, missing William, but hitting the horse beside him, sending its rider crashing to the ground. Get her! William screamed. But Clara was already running. She dove behind the water trough as bullets kicked up dirt around her. Her heart was pounding, her hands shaking, but she kept firing, kept moving. Eli emerged from the barn, rifle blazing. 2 more deputies went down before the others realized what was happening. They broke and ran their horses thundering away across the frozen ground. That left William. He had dismounted, using his horse as cover. His gun was pointed at Clara. You think you've won, he snarled. You think this changes anything. It changes everything. I'll kill you. I'll kill you and take those children, and you won't. Clara stood up from behind the trough. Her revolver was empty, but she didn't let him see her hands shake. You won't, because you need me alive. You need my signature. Without it, you've got nothing. William's eyes flickered. She'd hit a nerve. So here's what's going to happen, Clara continued. You're going to get on that horse. You're going to ride away from here, and you're never going to come near me or my children again. And if I don't... The click of a rifle being cocked answered for her. Eli stepped out of the barn, his weapon trained on William's chest. Then you die here, Eli said. Your choice. William looked from Clara to Eli to the rifle pointed at his heart. For a moment, she thought he might try something anyway, might prefer death to defeat. But William had always been a coward at his core. He lowered his gun. This isn't over, he said, mounting his horse. Yes, it is. I'll come back, with more men, with... You come back and I'll be ready. Clara's voice was steady now, all the fear burned away. And next time, I won't miss. William stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was fear. Maybe he was finally seeing the woman he'd tried so hard to break standing unbroken before him. He rode away without another word. Clara watched until he disappeared over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. Eli caught her before she hit the ground. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her, his heart hammering against her chest. You're all right, he said. You're all right. The children, safe. They're safe. Clara buried her face in his shoulder and let herself cry. Let herself shake. Let herself feel everything she'd been holding back. You came for me, she whispered. Always. I was so scared. So was I. She pulled back, looked at his face. There was blood on his sleeve. Not his, she realized with relief, and dirt on his cheeks. He looked tired and worried, and absolutely beautiful. Thank you, she said. For everything. Don't thank me yet. He'll be back. I know, but next time I'll be ready. Eli smiled, then really smiled, and something in Clara's chest broke open. Yeah, he said. I reckon you will be. The children came running out of the house, all of them crying, all of them reaching for her. Clara gathered them in her arms and held on tight. Over their heads, she met Eli's eyes. He nodded once. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The night after William rode away, Clara couldn't stop shaking. She sat by the fire, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, while the children slept in the back room. Eli had stayed up with her, silent and steady, not pushing her to talk, but not leaving her alone either. I keep seeing his face, she said finally. The way he looked at me. Like I was nothing. Like I'd always be nothing. You're not nothing. I know. I know that now. But for so long... She pulled the blanket tighter. For so long I believed him. Every terrible thing he said, I believed it. Eli moved from his chair to sit beside her on the floor. Their shoulders touched. What changed? Clara thought about it. You. This place. Seeing my children laugh again. She looked at him, realizing that I could stand up and fight back. That I wasn't as weak as he made me feel. You were never weak. I felt weak. That's not the same thing. Eli's voice was low, rough. Weak people don't walk 3 days through a blizzard. Weak people don't stand in front of 6 armed men and refuse to break. You're the strongest person I've ever met, Clara, and I've met a lot of people. Clara's eyes filled with tears. She'd cried more in the past few weeks than she had in years of marriage to William, but these tears felt different, cleaner somehow. What happens now? She asked. Now we make sure he can't come back. How? I sent word to Judge Harrison 2 counties over. He's a fair man, honest. If we can get him to hear your case, we can get those papers from Granger County thrown out. And if we can't... Eli's jaw tightened. Then we find another way. Clara leaned against him, letting her head rest on his shoulder. He stiffened for just a moment, then relaxed his arm, coming up to wrap around her. I'm tired, she whispered. So tired of being afraid. I know. Will it ever stop? Eli was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a murmur. Fear doesn't stop. Not completely. But it gets quieter. And eventually you learn to live alongside it, instead of under it. Clara closed her eyes. His heartbeat was steady against her ear, a rhythm she could anchor herself to. Stay with me tonight, she said. Not like that. Just stay. I don't want to be alone. I ain't going anywhere. They sat there until the fire burned low, until Clara's breathing evened out, and her body finally relaxed into exhaustion. Eli didn't move, didn't let go. He kept watch through the night like he'd been doing all along. The next morning brought visitors. Clara was making breakfast when she heard horses approaching. Her hand went to the revolver at her hip. She wore it everywhere now, but Eli was already at the window. It's all right. I know them. He opened the door to 3 men on horseback. They were weathered and sun-beaten, the kind of men who'd spent their whole lives working the land. The oldest dismounted first, pulling off his hat. Eli, heard you had some trouble. Word travels fast. In these parts, always. The man looked past Eli to where Clara stood in the doorway. Ma'am, I'm Hector Rawlings. Got the spread about 10 miles east. These are my boys Tom and James. Clara Whitmore, she said. Pleased to meet you. Hector nodded, then turned back to Eli. We also heard some men from Granger County been causing problems, making threats. You heard right. Well, we came to let you know you ain't alone in this. Whatever you need, men, guns, supplies, you got it. Clara's throat tightened. She hadn't expected this. Hadn't expected anyone to care. Why? She asked. You don't even know me. Hector looked at her with eyes that had seen too much and still chose kindness. Don't need to know you, ma'am. I know Eli, and I know what kind of men come from places like Granger County throwing their weight around like they own everything. He spat in the dirt. We don't take kindly to that here. We appreciate it, Eli said. Truly. Don't appreciate me yet. Wait till you see what I can do with a rifle. Hector cracked a weathered smile. You need us, you send word. We'll come running. The men rode off, but their visit left something behind. A sense of community Clara hadn't felt in years. A reminder that not everyone in the world was cruel. Does this happen often? She asked Eli after they'd gone. People just showing up to help. Out here? Yeah, it's how we survive. He closed the door. Nobody makes it alone. We look out for each other. Clara thought about her old life, about the isolation William had enforced, the way he'd cut her off from everyone who might have helped her. I forgot what that felt like, she said quietly. Having people who cared. Well, you got them now, whether you're ready or not. She smiled despite herself. I think I might be ready. 3 days later, they rode to see Judge Harrison. Clara left the children with Mrs. Ada Perkins, a widow, who lived about 5 miles down the road. Ada was sharp-tongued and soft-hearted, and she'd taken one look at Clara's children and declared them the most well-behaved young ones she'd seen in 20 years. They'll be safe here, Ada assured Clara. And if anyone comes looking for trouble, well. She patted the shotgun leaning against her doorframe. I've got answers for that. The ride to Judge Harrison's town took most of the day. Clara hadn't been on a horse this long since before she was married, and her body protested every mile. But she didn't complain. This was too important. The judge was a tall man with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He listened to Clara's story without interrupting, his face grave. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You have witnesses to the abuse. My children. They saw everything. Children's testimony is difficult. Courts don't always take it seriously. Clara's heart sank. Then what? I didn't say impossible. I said difficult. Judge Harrison leaned forward. What about neighbors, friends? Anyone who might have seen bruises heard arguments. Clara tried to remember. There was a doctor once, Dr. Clemens. He treated me after William. She swallowed. After a particularly bad night, he asked questions. I lied, but I think he knew. Do you know where this doctor is now? Last I heard, he'd moved to Miller's Creek. The judge nodded, making a note. I'll send someone to find him. His testimony could help. And the papers from Granger County? Eli asked. The ones claiming she kidnapped her own children. Fraudulent, most likely. Judge Porter in Granger County is known for creative interpretations of the law, especially when money changes hands. Harrison's expression darkened. I'll file a counterpetition. Challenge the jurisdiction. It won't be fast, but it'll buy you time. How much time? Weeks, maybe months. The judge looked at Clara. Can you stay safe that long? She thought about Eli's ranch, about the neighbors who'd come to help, about the gun at her hip, and the strength she'd found in herself. Yes, she said. I can. They stayed in town overnight, taking separate rooms at the boarding house. Clara lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds, wagons rolling past, dogs, barking, voices drifting up from the saloon down the street. A knock at her door made her sit up sharply. It's me, Eli's voice came through the wood. She opened the door. He stood there looking uncertain, which was so unlike him that Clara almost smiled. "Everything all right?" "Fine. He shifted his weight. "Wanted to check on you." "I'm fine." "You sure?" Clara stepped back to let him in. He hesitated, then entered, leaving the door open behind him. "I've been thinking," she said, about what happens after. After the papers go through. After William gives up." She sat on the edge of the bed. "I never let myself think about after. It always seemed too far away." Eli leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And now? Now it feels closer. Real." She looked up at him. "What do you want, Eli, when this is all over?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I want what I've been wanting since you showed up in my yard. I want you to stay. Not because you need shelter or protection, because you want to. And if I do want to, then I reckon we figure out the rest together." Clara's heart was pounding. She stood up, closed the distance between them. "I'm still scared," she said. "Of trusting. Of letting myself feel something real." "I know. But I'm more scared of losing you. Of walking away from something that could be good because I was too afraid to try." Eli reached out his hand, cupping her face. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, gentle as a whisper. "You don't have to decide anything tonight." "I know. But I want to tell you something." "What?" Clara took a breath. The words had been building for weeks, pressing against her chest, demanding to be spoken. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Eli went still. His eyes searched her face. "Clara, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. I needed to say it out loud to make it real." "Clara." His voice broke on her name. "I've been in love with you since the second week. Maybe before. I just didn't think I had the right to say it." "Why not?" "Because you were hurt. Because you needed time. Because I didn't want to be another man making demands on you." Clara leaned into his hand, closing her eyes. "You're nothing like him. You're nothing like anyone I've ever known." "Is that good?" "It's everything." He kissed her then. Soft, at first tentative, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, when she pressed closer and wound her arms around his neck, the kiss deepened into something fierce and hungry and raw. They broke apart, breathless foreheads pressed together. "We should wait," Eli said, his voice strained. "Do this proper." "I know. I want to marry you, Clara. I want to give you my name and make it legal and right." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I want that too." "Then we wait. We do this right. And when it's done, when you're free of him completely, we start fresh." She nodded, her heart so full it hurt. Together. Together. They stood there holding each other as the night deepened outside the window, and for the first time, Clara let herself believe in the future. The ride home felt different. Clara sat straighter in the saddle, her eyes on the horizon instead of the ground. Something had shifted inside her. The fear was still there. It would always be there, but it no longer controlled her. They were about an hour from the ranch when Eli pulled up short. "What is it?" Clara asked. "Smoke." She looked where he was pointing. In the distance, a thin column of gray rose against the pale sky. "That's coming from the direction of the ranch." They rode hard. By the time they reached the property, Clara's heart was in her throat. But the house was standing. The barn was intact. The smoke was coming from a smaller structure near the edge of the property, an old shed that Eli used for storage. "Stay here," Eli said, dismounting. "No." "Clara." "I said no." She was already off, her horse revolver in hand. "We do this together, remember?" He looked at her for a moment, then nodded. They approached the shed carefully. The fire was almost out. The structure collapsed in on itself. Nothing much had been inside Old Tool's spare lumber. Nothing worth killing for. But nailed to the fence post nearby was a piece of paper. Clara pulled it down her hands, shaking. "What does it say?" Eli asked. She read aloud, "This is your warning. Leave, or next time it won't be a shed." No signature, but they both knew who it was from. "He's not going to stop," Clara whispered. "No matter what the judge does, no matter what papers we file, he's never going to stop." "Then we make him stop." Clara looked at Eli. There was something in his eyes she'd never seen before, something cold and certain. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking it's time we stopped waiting for him to come to us." Eli took the note from her hands, crumpled it in his fist. "I'm thinking it's time we took the fight to him." "How?" "William wants that land. Your father's land. Without your signature, he can't touch it." Eli's jaw tightened. "But what if there was nothing left to touch?" "I don't understand." "What if you signed the land over not to him, to someone else? Someone he couldn't threaten or buy off?" Clara stared at him. "You mean you?" "I mean us. Both of us. Put both our names on it. Make it so there's nothing he can take that doesn't require going through me first." "Eli, that's everything I have. The only thing of value my father left me." "I know. And I'm not asking you to give it up. I'm asking you to share it. With me." He took her hands. "Not because I want the land, because I want you safe. And as long as that property is sitting there in your name alone, you're a target." Clara thought about it. Thought about her father, about what he would want for her. About the legacy she'd hoped to leave her children. "If we do this," she said slowly, "it has to be legal, official. I don't want any loopholes William can exploit." "Then we do it legal. Get the judge to draw up the papers himself. And the children. Their inheritance stays protected. We make sure of that." Clara was quiet for a long moment. This was a big decision. The biggest she'd made since leaving William. But looking at Eli, at his steady eyes, his honest face, his hands holding hers so gently, she knew she'd already made it. "All right," she said. "We'll do it." Eli's expression softened. "You trust me that much?" "I trust you with everything." He pulled her close, holding her against his chest. "I won't let you down." "I know." They stood there in the fading light, the ruins of the shed smoking behind them, and made plans for the future. William had tried to burn them out. He'd only made them stronger. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Eli sent word to Judge Harrison about the fire and the threat. The judge responded immediately, dispatching a federal marshal to investigate. Meanwhile, Hector Rawlings and his sons set up a rotating watch on the property, ensuring someone was always keeping an eye out for trouble. Clara threw herself into work. It was easier than thinking, easier than worrying. She fixed fences and fed cattle and taught Lily how to make biscuits from scratch. She held Thomas on her hip while she walked the property line, showing him the land that would one day be his. And every night after the children were asleep, she sat with Eli by the fire and talked. They talked about everything. His childhood on this very land. Her dreams of becoming a teacher before she married William. The things they wanted for the future. The fears they still carried. The wounds that hadn't quite healed. "Do you think he loved me?" Clara asked one night. "William, in the beginning." Eli considered the question. "I think some men don't know how to love. They know how to want, how to possess. But love," he shook his head. "Love doesn't hurt. Not like that." "Then what is love?" He looked at her firelight dancing in his eyes. "Love is wanting someone to be happy, even if it costs you something. Love is showing up day after day, even when it's hard. Love is..." He paused. "Love is what I feel when I look at you." Clara's breath caught. "Eli, I know we said we'd wait, do this proper, but I need you to know whatever happens tomorrow, or the next day, or the day after, that this is real for me. You're real for me. The most real thing I've felt in 7 years. Clara moved closer, curling into his side. It's real for me too. Yeah. Yeah. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low. Outside, the wind whispered through the cottonwoods, carrying the smell of snow and cedar. Spring's coming, Eli said quietly. I can feel it. When it does, when the road's clear and the weather warms. He turned to look at her. I'd like to marry you, if you'll have me. Clara smiled, her heart full to bursting. I'll have you. Just like that. Just like that. Eli laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised and full of joy. He pulled her close and kissed her forehead, her cheek the corner of her mouth. I love you, Clara Whitmore. I love you too, Eli Brennan. The fire crackled, the wind blew, and somewhere out there, William was still planning and scheming and nursing his hatred. But tonight, Clara didn't care. Tonight she was loved. She was safe. She was home. And that was enough. Spring arrived the way healing does, slowly at first, then all at once. The snow pulled back from the fields, revealing earth that had been waiting all winter to breathe. The creek behind the barn ran high and fast with meltwater. And Clara woke each morning to birdsong instead of silence. The children bloomed with the season. Samuel had grown 3 inches since they'd arrived, his shoulders broadening, his voice dropping into something that sounded more like a man's each day. Lily had stopped having nightmares. Rosie laughed constantly now, chasing chickens and collecting wildflowers and leaving them on Eli's pillow as gifts. And Thomas, sweet Thomas, who had nearly died in her arms that first terrible night, was walking and talking and getting into everything. Clara watched them from the porch one morning, coffee warming her hands, and felt something she'd almost forgotten how to feel. Peace. They're happy, Eli said, coming to stand beside her. They are. Are you? Clara looked at him, at this man who had changed everything, who had given her back herself. I don't have a word for what I am. Happy doesn't cover it. Eli smiled, that rare, full smile that still caught her off guard. Reckon we'll have to invent a new word then. Reckon we will. He put his arm around her shoulders, and they stood together watching the children play. It was ordinary, simple. The kind of moment Clara had stopped believing she could have. She held on to it tight. The letter from Judge Harrison arrived 3 days later. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. Eli stood beside her, close enough that she could feel the tension in his body. What does it say? She read it once, then again, not quite believing the words. The petition from Granger County has been dismissed. Judge Porter's been removed from the bench pending investigation. And William... She looked up at Eli, eyes wide. William's been arrested. Arrested for what? Fraud, assault, conspiracy to kidnap. Clara laughed, the sound shaky with relief. Apparently, Dr. Clemens wasn't the only one who knew what William was doing. Once the investigation started, people started talking. Women he'd hurt before me, business partners he'd cheated. It all came out. Eli let out a breath she hadn't realized he'd been holding. It's over. It's over. The words hung in the air between them, too big to fully absorb. Clara read the letter again, searching for some catch, some loophole, some way this could all fall apart. There wasn't one. He's going to prison, she said. For a long time. Good. And Silas, he turned on William, made a deal with the marshal. He's testifying against him in exchange for a reduced sentence. Eli's jaw tightened. Man like that selling out his own blood? Man like that never had loyalty to begin with. He was just using William the same way William used everyone else. Clara set the letter down. Her hands had stopped shaking. In their place was a stillness she'd never felt before. It was really over. After all the fear, all the running, all the nights lying awake, wondering when the other shoe would drop, It was finally truly over. "Clara?" She looked at Eli. "I need to sit down." He guided her to the porch steps, sat beside her, held her hand while she processed the enormity of what had just happened. "I never thought this day would come," she whispered. "Part of me was convinced he'd win, that he'd always win, that men like him just got away with things." "Sometimes they do," Eli said quietly. "But not this time. Not this time." They sat in silence as the morning sun climbed higher. The children's laughter drifted across the yard. Somewhere in the barn, a horse whinnied. "So," Eli said finally, "now what?" Clara looked at him, a smile spreading across her face. "Now we get married." The wedding was simple. Clara wanted it that way. After years of living under William's need for appearances for show, for proving his worth to everyone around him, she craved something real. They held it under the big cottonwood tree at the edge of the north pasture, the same tree where Eli's parents had been married 40 years before. The preacher came from town, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes, who didn't ask questions about Clara's past. She wore a dress Ada Perkins had helped her make, nothing fancy, just clean cotton and careful stitching. But it was hers, truly hers. The first thing she'd had in years that hadn't been chosen by someone else. The children stood beside her. Samuel serious and proud in a new shirt Eli had bought him. Lily holding a bundle of wildflowers she'd picked that morning. Rosie barely containing her excitement. And Thomas squirming in Clara's arms until Eli took him and settled him on his hip like he'd been doing it all his life. Hector Rawlings came, and his boys and Ada, and a dozen other neighbors Clara had come to know over the past months. People who had shown up without being asked, who had stood watch and offered help and treated her like she belonged. People who had become family. "You ready?" Eli asked quietly as the preacher opened his Bible. Clara looked at this man, at his steady eyes, his calloused hands, his heart that had room enough for all of them. "I've been ready since the day you told me to follow you." The ceremony was brief. They exchanged vows, simple words that meant everything. Eli produced a ring-thin gold band, nothing extravagant, and slipped it onto her finger. "This was my mother's," he said. "She'd want you to have it." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Eli, you're my family now. All of you. And family shares what matters." The preacher pronounced them husband and wife. Eli kissed her, gentle and firm and full of promise. The children cheered. Somewhere someone was crying. Ada probably, though she'd deny it later. And Clara Whitmore became Clara Brennan. That night, after the neighbors had gone home and the children were asleep, Clara and Eli sat on the porch watching the stars come out. "Mrs. Brennan," Eli said, testing the words. "Mr. Brennan," Clara replied, smiling. "How does it feel?" "Like something I didn't know I was waiting for." He reached over and took her hand, running his thumb across the ring on her finger. "I never thought I'd do this again," he admitted. "After Eleanor, I figured I'd just live out my days alone. Work the land until I couldn't anymore. Die quiet." "That sounds lonely." It was. He looked at her. "Then you showed up." Clara leaned into him, half dead and desperate, strong and brave. "I didn't feel strong." You never do when you're in the middle of it. Strength isn't about feeling brave. It's about doing what needs doing even when you're terrified. Clara thought about that. About the walk through the blizzard, the confrontation with William, the decision to stay and fight instead of running. "I'm glad I found you," she said. "You didn't find me. You collapsed in my yard." Clara laughed. "Fine. I'm glad I collapsed in your yard." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky deepen from purple to black. The stars emerged one by one, bright and clear and impossibly vast. "What do you think the future holds?" Clara asked. "Don't know. Don't need to know." Eli squeezed her hand. "I figure we'll meet it together, whatever it is. Together." That's the deal. Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the night air, clean and cold, and full of possibility. For the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. The months that followed were quiet in the best way. Clara learned the rhythms of ranch life properly, now not as a guest or a refugee, but as someone who belonged. She rose with the sun and worked until it set her body growing stronger, her mind growing clearer. She taught Lily and Rosie to read using the books from Eli's shelf. She helped Samuel with his arithmetic, watched him grow into a young man she was proud of. She held Thomas's hand as he took his first steps alone, caught him when he fell, set him back on his feet. And every night, she lay beside her husband and thanked whatever power had led her to his door. Summer came hot and dry. They worked the cattle, repaired the fences, stored up supplies for the winter ahead. Clara learned to can vegetables and cure meat and make 100 small decisions that kept a household running. She also learned to laugh again. It started slowly, a chuckle at something Rosie said, a smile at one of Eli's rare jokes. But gradually the laughter came easier, fuller, more often. The children noticed. Eli noticed. "You sound different," he said one evening. "Different how?" "Lighter. Like you set something down." Clara thought about it. "I think I did. I think I finally set down all the weight I'd been carrying." "About time." "It took a while." "Some things do." He pulled her close. "Worth the wait, though." Autumn arrived with a chill in the air and a letter in the mail. Clara recognized the official seal immediately. Her hands trembled as she opened it. "What is it?" Eli asked. "William." She scanned the contents. "He's dead." Eli went still. "How?" "Prison fight. 3 days ago." Clara read the rest of the letter, her emotions a jumble she couldn't quite sort out. "They're asking if I want to claim the body." "Do you?" She thought about it. About the man she'd married, the monster he'd become, the years of pain he'd inflicted. "No," she said finally. "Let them bury him. He stopped being my responsibility a long time ago." Eli nodded. He didn't push, didn't ask questions, just stood beside her while she processed. "I thought I'd feel something," Clara said quietly. "Relief maybe, or anger. But I just feel empty. Like it doesn't matter anymore." "Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you already moved past him." Clara set the letter down. She looked at her hands, calloused now, strong from work, wearing a ring that meant something real. "I think I did," she said. "I think I moved past him the day I decided to stay." Eli put his arm around her. "Good." That night, Clara dreamed of her father. He was standing in a field she didn't recognize, sunlight catching his silver hair, a smile on his weathered face. "You did good, Clara girl," he said. "You did real good." She woke with tears on her cheeks and peace in her heart. Winter came again. This time Clara watched the snow fall without fear. The house was warm, the pantry was full, and her children were safe. She had everything she'd ever wanted, and things she'd never known to want. On Christmas morning, the children tore into the small gifts. She and Eli had prepared new boots for Samuel, a doll for Lily, a wooden horse for Rosie, and a ball for Thomas that he immediately tried to eat. "I have something for you too," Eli said, pulling Clara aside. "You've already given me everything." "Not everything." He pressed something into her hand. Clara looked down. It was a piece of paper, official-looking, covered in legal script. "What is this?" "Deed to your father's land. Judge Harrison helped me sort it out." Eli's voice was gruff. "It's yours now, free and clear. No one can take it from you." Clara stared at the paper. Her father's land. The inheritance William had tried to steal, the reason he'd hunted her across 2 counties. "Eli, I know you said we'd share everything, and we will. But this..." He touched her face, tilting her chin up to meet his eyes. "This needed to be yours. Just yours. Something nobody can ever take away." Clara threw her arms around him, the paper crumpling between them. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." "Merry Christmas, Clara." "Merry Christmas, Eli." The children demanded attention, then dragging them back into the chaos of wrapping paper and excited chatter. But Clara held on to the deed, held on to the moment, held on to everything she'd been given. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Frozen, starving, convinced she was going to die in the snow with her children. She thought about the journey from there to here, the impossible odds, the moments when she'd wanted to give up. She thought about survival, about strength, about love. And she understood something she hadn't understood before. She wasn't the same woman who'd collapsed in Eli's yard. That woman had been broken down by years of abuse, worn thin by fear, convinced she deserved nothing better than what she'd been given. This woman, Clara Brennan, wife and mother and survivor, was someone else entirely. Someone who had walked through fire and come out stronger. Someone who had learned that help could come from unexpected places, that kindness still existed, that starting over was possible. Someone who had found home. Spring came again, softer this time, gentler. Clara stood on the porch watching her children play in the yard, Samuel teaching Rosie to ride, Lily reading under the cottonwood tree, Thomas toddling after a butterfly with single-minded determination. Eli came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" Clara leaned back into him. "About how far we've come. How different everything is. Good different. The best kind." They watched the children together, the sun warm on their faces, the land stretching out around them full of promise. "I never thought I'd have this," Clara said quietly. "A family, a home, a man who loves me the way you do. I never thought I'd have it either. Figured that part of my life was over. I guess we were both wrong. I guess we were." Clara turned in his arms, looking up at his face, the face she'd come to love more than she'd ever thought possible. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For opening your door, for letting us in, for standing beside me when you could have walked away." Eli touched her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "I could never have walked away, not from you." "Why not?" "Because some things are worth fighting for. You taught me that." Clara kissed him soft and slow, putting everything she felt into it. "I love you, Eli Brennan." "I love you too, Clara Brennan, more than I ever thought I could love anything." They held each other as the morning brightened around them. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang. The children laughed. The world turned steady and sure. Clara thought about the road that had brought her here, the terrible cold, the burning house, the endless miles through the snow with 4 children and no hope. She thought about the moment she'd fallen in Eli's yard, certain she was dying, certain it was all over. She hadn't been dying. She'd been beginning. "Mama!" Rosie came running up, her face flushed with excitement. "Mama, I rode the horse all by myself." Clara smiled, scooping her daughter into her arms. "Did you?" "All by myself. Samuel only helped a little." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Rosie beamed, wriggling free to run back to her brother. Lily waved from under the tree. Thomas had given up on the butterfly and was now attempting to eat dirt. Clara laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from deep inside. "What's so funny?" Eli asked. "Nothing. Everything. Just this life. Our life. It's a good life. It's the best life." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his, the ring warm against her skin. "Come on," she said. "We've got work to do." They walked into the yard together, toward the children, toward the land, toward everything they'd built. The sun climbed higher. The day stretched out ahead of them, full of ordinary tasks and small moments, and the quiet joy of being exactly where they belonged. Clara Brennan had come to this place with nothing but her children and her stubborn will to survive. Now she had everything, and she was never letting go. The woman who had begged for mercy in the snow was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone forged in fire, tempered by pain, made strong by love. She had fought for her children. She had fought for herself. She had fought for a future she'd been told she didn't deserve. And she had won. Not because the world had been kind to her. Not because someone had saved her. Not because the odds were ever in her favor. But because she had refused to stop walking. Because she had chosen to keep going when everything inside her wanted to give up. Because she had found the courage to follow a stranger's voice into the unknown and trust that whatever came next had to be better than what she was leaving behind. Clara looked at her family, at this land, at the life she'd built from nothing, and she knew with absolute certainty that she would do it all again. Every frozen step, every desperate night, every moment of fear and doubt and pain. She would walk through it all again 1,000 times over to end up here, because this love, this home, this impossible beautiful life was worth every single step of the journey. And Clara Brennan was finally completely unshakably home.